Hey friends, happy Monday the 12th of August, 19th week in Ordinary Time. I'm Father Bill Hill, priest at Holy Spirit Catholic Community in Rock Springs, Wyoming. I'll share with you a reflection on the daily readings. The readings are linked below. Click the link, read the readings prayerfully, and then turn off the screen. Spend some time with God before you move on to other things. I hope that the start of your work week is a blessing and a grace for you. I think public school kids here in Rock Springs are starting this week. Hold you guys in prayer, and your teachers and your families and everybody else. God love you. Catholic school kids still a couple weeks away. Hey, we are switching gears into Ezekiel, the prophet, today. I think we're still working on Matthew's gospel. I'm not positive if maybe we have 2 more weeks of Old Testament prophets that we're working on. I think we've spent about a month. We've got about 2 more weeks, about a 6-week jag in Old Testament prophets. I haven't looked ahead to see if we've got Ezekiel for all of these next 2 weeks. Ezekiel has become a more loved prophet of my own because of COVID time. I oftentimes describe as Ezekiel the prophet of the disruption. Ezekiel experienced all of it. He would have been born and raised in Jerusalem in a priestly family, and then he was carted off in exile in the first load of exiles in 597 BC. Jerusalem is destroyed 10 years later, 587. And so right at the time that Ezekiel should be serving in the temple, he starts to have experiences of God to serve as a prophet. And be mindful, he's in Babylon, 500 miles away. So he has seen, terrible stuff. He's going to continue to see terrible stuff. And he's going to prophesy of God who is still going to take care of the people. In the back of their mind, all of them should have been thinking of the Assyrian exile. Remember, when I talk about this a fair amount over the course of these weeks, 150 years before, the northern kingdom of Israel was destroyed by Assyria, and much of its leadership was taken off into exile. They're never seen or heard from again in the history of, the human family. And so folks from Judah, Jerusalem, were thinking the same thing. Will we return from this? What is going to be our story as a people? And Ezekiel plays an absolutely pivotal role in helping the exiles to respond to the call of God and to be faithful in that call. So today in Ezekiel we have, I want to say one more thing. I linked to the bishop's website, and if you're looking at that either on your phone or on your laptop, the upper right-hand corner of the first reading, it has chapter and verse. It says Ezekiel chapter 1 stuff. If you click on that, that takes you to the book of the Bible that the U.S. bishops have the copyright to. At the bottom of that first chapter are excellent footnotes, but then also you can read the introduction to Ezekiel. I will try to remember to link that below, but man, the introductions on all of the Old Testament books, all of the books of the Bible are good in the Bible that the bishops have, the St. Joseph edition. If you wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at that gives us some of the context for Ezekiel, helps us to read this more intelligently, frankly. Okay, so Ezekiel is starting, as have other prophets that we've worked with, is starting with his call story, right? So we're about 5 years into their exile, 5 years before the real destruction of Jerusalem, and the word of the Lord comes to Ezekiel, and he has a vision of God, and God who is surrounded by the seraphim. And they are mighty, and they are terrifying. We don't get the vision of the throne of God here. That gets kind of cut out. But it's noteworthy that in Ezekiel's time, it is a movable throne. It's a throne that's like a chariot. It can move because, after all, Jerusalem is going to be destroyed, and the glory of God is going to leave Jerusalem in Ezekiel's prophecies before the city is destroyed. This is an image of God who is incredibly powerful and a God who is terrifying. And even the angels who serve God are worthy of terror. People will read this, moderns will read this, and they'll say, it doesn't sound like anything that existed in ancient Israel 2,800 years ago. Therefore, Ezekiel has to be prophesying about the present age. And you know what he's talking about? He's talking about helicopters. No. That's not how we as Catholics read this. We say, okay, how would this have been understood by Ezekiel and by his listeners? Because it had to have been intelligible, because they chose to preserve it. And then we seek to understand. And so especially Ezekiel is describing the throne room scene, the majesty of God and those who serve God. Perhaps we just close our eyes and allow that scene to unfold, and especially find ourselves in worship and adoration and praise of God, who is always so far beyond our ability to conceptualize and our ability to understand. The psalm response, much the same, right? Heaven and earth are filled with your glory, just to use the words of God, to give God praise. Okay, Matthew's gospel, a continuation, right? The Son of Man is to be handed over to men. They will kill him, and he will be raised on the third day. And they were overwhelmed with grief. Notice that last week they disagreed with Jesus and they argued with him. Now they are simply overwhelmed with grief at what this might be. Perhaps we just take a moment. We're mindful of Jesus, this loving rabbi who taught about the reign of God and who also taught of the evil of human hearts and the way that he was going to be tortured and executed by people. How awful the mystery of suffering and evil is, and maybe we just sit with that image of Jesus. So often I can take the crucifixion for granted, but Jesus who walks into it fully understanding and predicting and talking about it openly to his disciples is a powerful image. Second image is Jesus who pays his taxes. And clearly Jesus doesn't think that he should, right? He engages in a bit of a conversation with Peter. Who's supposed to be paying these taxes? Foreigners. Let's pay attention to that. But hey, we'll still pay the temple tax. But I'm not paying it out of our own pocket. Peter, go toss a hook into the water, pull out a fish, and in that fish there will be a coin. And that'll be twice the temple tax for you and me. Go pay the temple tax. Right? It's delightful. It's Jesus who doesn't particularly want to pay the temple tax, think that he should pay the temple tax, but at the same time is willing to, and miraculously tells his students to pay it on their behalf. I don't necessarily know exactly what you want to pray with there. Like, what's your engagement with the modern world, taxation structure, all of it, right? Pray with that as you desire. All right, friends, read those readings prayerfully. Turn off the screen. Spend some time with God before you move on to other things. Happy Monday. May the week be a blessing and a grace for all of us. Pray for folks having a hard time. God bless y'all.